In this video, we'll show you what makes Aura Atmospheric Drone Builder such a unique tool and creative instrument to help you produce the perfect musical setting for your music. Aura allows you to blend up to 4 different sound sources to create sounds from dark and brooding to airy and light. Okay, let's start with a quick overview, then we'll go back and look at everything in more detail. Aura contains hundreds of samples and presets to start from. And, in addition, you can drag and drop your own samples right into the instrument. From here, you can create detailed edits for each of your 4 samples in the Edit page. The Mods page allows for a whole new layer of interest and creativity with your sounds by pairing effects with various LFOs, resulting in unique sound design with motion. The Effects page allows for even more effects that can be added individually per channel or globally across all of your sounds. And the last tab is the Keyboard page, allowing you to edit the layout of your samples. Okay, let's go back to the main page, and now we'll look at everything in more detail. To start, let's talk about the keyboard layout at the bottom. The top blue range allows for chromatic playback of your sounds. The section below that allows you to play back each engine individually. You'll notice the colors of the keys match the associated color of each of the 4 engines. Unlike the blue range above it, these keys will play back your sample in its original key. This yellow key will play back all 4 engines at once in their original keys. The light green key toggles on and off the playback of any recorded movement in the XY pad. The 4 red keys below this are only available when you've toggled any of the 4 mod effects to be turned on via a mod trigger. Now pressing these keys will activate the different mod effects you've applied to any of the 4 different engines. Looking back at the main GUI, you'll notice how clicking on any of the 4 sample names will take you to the sample browser. In fact, clicking on a sample name from any of Aura's pages that display the engines and their sample names will also take you to the sample selection page. Each engine has mute, solo, and volume controls. Between that are the 4 mod effects on-off switches. To apply any mod effect to a specific engine, you simply have to select the number of the mod effect you want to activate on that engine. So Effect 1 is currently set up to have an LFO modulate the volume, which can now be heard on any of the selected engines where you've turned on Mod 1. We'll look at changing and creating your mod effects in more detail in a few moments. Continuing on, the wrench icon opens further controls for each engine, which includes pan and pitch knobs, and ADSR, and very handy high and low cut controls. These can be really useful when you need to craft space for each of your samples in your 4 engines. For example, I don't want any of my samples to mask the subfrequencies of my low-end sample in engine D. So I'll just pull up the low cut on the other engines to make sure there's plenty of space for that sample. Clicking on the dot in between the high and low cut allows you to drag the full range of the low and high cut to really craft the exact sonic space you want a sample to fill. If you want to adjust the parameters for all 4 of your engines at once, just click the link icon here. Then any adjustment you make for one engine will be made for all 4 engines. The XY pad can seamlessly blend between the 4 different engines. You can even record in movement on the XY pad that can add a further layer of interest and motion to your atmosphere or drone. Let's start by hitting the record button to add in a pattern. Now as I play back my sample, I'll adjust my XY pad to capture the movement. The play button will now activate the XY motion, which can also be triggered via MIDI with this green key here. Sync will lock the XY pad motion into a 1-bar section based on your host BPM. With the on trigger button turned on, the recorded XY pattern will start from the beginning of each new note you press. And lastly, pressing the MIDI icon brings up a pop-up of your X and Y locations. These are mainly useful if you want to MIDI CC assign your X and Y to any MIDI knob on a controller. Right-clicking on either one will give you the option to assign a controller knob or fader. That being said, you'll find most knobs on the main and edit pages are MIDI CC assignable. As mentioned earlier, you can drag and drop your own WAVE, AIF, or NCW samples into Aura. It's as simple as dragging your sample over the waveform of any of the 4 engines. You can also drag a sample into an engine from the edit page. Simply highlight the engine you'd like to add a sample to and drag your sample to this icon. The edit page expands on the edit view from the main page, giving you additional controls. For starters, you can simply and easily adjust the start position of your samples. In addition, you can also adjust your loop points and toggle on or off whether you want your sample to loop at all. The last 3 unique controls on this page is the loop crossfade time knob, a transpose option, allowing you to quickly transpose a sample up or down by octaves, and the option of changing outputs on your 4 engines. If you are using the multi-output version of Contact, you can then create different outputs for each engine for maximum mix control back in your DAW. Let's move on to looking at the features of the sample browser. As I mentioned earlier, you can click a sample name on any of the engines where they appear in the GUI to go to the samples browser. To change the sample in Engine A, simply select Engine A from this section, then choose a new sample from the browser below. To preview the samples, I'd recommend soloing this channel so you can hear only this sample when playing it back from the keyboard. We've carefully tagged all the samples in our library so you can find exactly what you're looking for. Say you want to find a tonal sound that has evolving elements and you want it to create tension. Simply select those tags and Aura will give you its suggestions of samples to try. Clicking the star icon next to any sample name will let you identify your favorite samples in the future for a faster workflow. As you scroll through samples, you might notice some letters to the right of the sample. This simply indicates this sample is already loaded into one of your 4 engines. So the letter D next to this sample indicates this sample, as you can see, is already loaded into Engine D. You could also try the randomizer dice feature in the upper right-hand corner. Only the engine letters selected will be part of this process. So when you click the dice and you want to keep engines C and D in place and want to try something random for engines A and B, make sure C and D are not selected, then go ahead and roll the dice. Another great place to start is our presets browser. Click the presets browser icon in the upper right-hand corner of the GUI. You'll find over 100 presets to choose from. Sort by tags to quickly find exactly what you're looking for. The XY pad on this page provides for a quick way to preview the 4 different sounds in each preset. The keyboard page allows you to edit the playable range of each of the 4 loaded samples, or remove a sample from the chromatic play range entirely. For example, by clicking the keyboard icon from Engine A, we've removed it from the playable chromatic range of the keyboard, but it has left it on the Engine A trigger here. Now I can drone Engine A while playing a more melodic part with the other 3 samples. For samples still part of the playable chromatic range, you can edit how big of a range you want it to play from. Say you only want the sample of Engine D to play back in the higher registers. Simply drag the range to your desired location. Lastly on this page, you can also edit the root note of a sample if need be, and also edit the velocity range that a sample will trigger with. For example, if you'd like the sample from Engine C to only trigger when a note is played at a higher velocity, you can move up the range from say 90 to 127, so that now the sample will only trigger when a note is played harder. Let's now look in more detail at the mods page. The mods page allows you to add effects, but with the added feature of being able to modulate these effects with an LFO or step sequencer. We've provided you with 4 different effect slots labeled 1 through 4 and with the currently associated effect name. Let's look at slot 1. Currently, the slot is set to affect your high-pass filter. To hear the effect on any of your samples, select the number of the mod effect on that engine from here. Now you can hear the filter engage once I've selected 1 under Engine A's mods. Now let's make this filter have some movement by applying LFO1 to the cutoff. Now, down below we can edit LFO1 with the exact parameters we'd like. Notice as I move the amount knob, the width of the filter modulation decreases and increases. The retrigger button makes the LFO restart on each note you play. Notice the high-pass filter also has the option of modulating the resonance of the filter. We can modulate that with LFO1 if we'd like, but we can also choose another modulator for even more flexibility. Let's choose Step Sequencer 1 to modulate the resonance. Each of the 4 mod effects can also be set up to be turned on and off by a trigger on your keyboard. To activate this feature, click the keyboard icon in the mod effect. Now you'll notice a red key appear here on your keyboard, which will now be used to activate this mod effect. Now this effect can be enabled at any point during your playback. As you start creating more layered levels of mod effects, keep in mind the 4 modulators are global to the mod effects, meaning if you have LFO1 applied to multiple parameters or multiple mod effects, changing a setting on LFO1 will change the setting for all effects and parameters you have LFO1 applied to. Lastly, let's look at the Effects tab. We've also included these 7 effects that can be applied individually to any of the 4 engines. You can also choose Master here to apply an effect across all 4 sounds at once. I hope this walkthrough has helped you gain an understanding of the power and flexibility of Aura atmospheric drones. For more information on Aura, check out the product page at vir2.com.